Welcome to the Gain Momentum podcast, focusing on timeless lessons from senior leaders in hospitality, travel, food service, and technology. I'm joined by two members of the Innspire team today. Innspire with two N's, just to make it extra special for hospitality. Anne Frye, president, and Dawid Dawod, head of product. How are you both doing?
Great, great. Thanks, Adam. Thanks for having us today.
Yeah, well, I'm very excited to have you guys on because you have an incredible platform and incredible products for really ushering in that next generation of hospitality experience. So, to start off, I'm wondering if one of you could give the elevator pitch on Inspire and the products that you offer to hotels.
Sure, sure. I can do that, Adam. Again, thanks for having us. We really appreciate it. So we live by the three pillars, really, by driving ancillary revenue. We're creating operational efficiencies and enhancing the guest journey. And we're doing that from a digital guest journey platform and through multiple touch points along the guest stay. So from a guest mobile device, via an AI concierge, messaging platform, via mobile app, other touch points along the way, really all the way into a guest room for IPTV solutions and the ability to cast and stream. We see these touch points as a way for hoteliers to really have one ecosystem, right? But everything is also modular. So if hotels are looking for, really guest messaging platform, F&B ordering, IPTV solutions, we can have a modular platform, but everything is a ecosystem based on an AI backbone.
Cool. So, within that digital guest journey, you have the center of that is this category of technology called the guest management system or the guest experience management system, GMS or GEMS. The term is used interchangeably. And I'm wondering if one of you could first describe what is meant by a unified inbox insofar as having all your messages come in from all these guest touch points and what service agents can do to enable better service just by having everything unified.
I mean, if we look at it the way that Anne just described, I mean, we're all about that ecosystem with the various touch points. So obviously, one way of streamlining operations is just getting all of that messaging, all of those requests into one place, and hence why we developed the Inspire One platform to be able to handle that. The far more interesting question is, I think, based on that, depending on what guest touch points the guests are using, how you orchestrate that journey, and how you tailor, the intelligence or the large language model to understand what those requests are, and being able to categorize them in the right way or present the guest with the right user interface to achieve something, or to pass that on as a task to staff.
Yeah, I mean, the whole advent of LLMs, large language models, really helping out to parse out a task. I'm wondering if we could just color that with a bit of a technical workflow. So a guest says to a hotel via WhatsApp,
Yeah.
I need more towels right now. What happens?
So I mean, basically, what happens is that the LLM identifies this as a request just by the way that the sentence is structured, right? That's what
Yeah.
LLMs are great at, just like identifying data. So if it identifies that as a task, what happens then is that the LLM creates a task through our system and basically takes that information, posts it on a task board that we have inside of Inspire One, and we present it through our front end there to the staff. And based on whether it's towels, right? It can identify, okay, it's a towel. It probably should go into housekeeping, right? To that, so it auto assigns the housekeeping department, and then it's up to the hotel, or whether you automate that to actually assign that to a living human or a person. That could also be done. So,
Hmm.
in a nutshell, that is what the system does.
And it all can also integrate with the guest ticketing system that the hoteliers may already have, right? So we have our own test management system, but we're always trying to keep operational, efficiencies. And the team is used to using, a hot sauce or an Alice or a third-party ticketing system. We can easily integrate, or we already do integrate with that system, and then it can be a two-way integration, right? So, as David described, the guest is asking for the towels. Adam, you made a great point that a lot of times it's guests are looking for things urgently, and then it's going to create the ticket. The housekeeper on the back end, it's the same workflow for them, right? So it's not something new or different, or change management is always an issue. But this is something where it's like, okay, I'm used to getting it through the system I already am. They're able to complete the task, mark it complete, and then we can send a follow-up message back to the guest. The AI can, two-way notification, close out the task, and let the guest know, I hope that you enjoy your fresh towels or whatever that might be.
Yeah, so much of the experience or the service management is managing expectations. So if something's going to take 15 minutes to complete or 3 hours to complete, so long as we notify the guest of that time rather than just leaving them in the loop and they request something and then they don't know what's happening. So just communicating that in advance of the task actually being resolved is a huge modality where AI is coming ahead. Um, and on that front, are there any other, basic LLM driven tools that you're implementing or have seen that really drive that value for hotels to automate the guest service?
Yeah, I can answer this. I think that there's a really interesting frontier now in terms of sort of LLMs understand, like LLMs are great at understanding context, right? So
Yeah.
being able to present the guest with the right, like offer, or pushing the right message or the right marketing campaign at the right moment. And this is something we're working
Mm,
extensively
okay.
on in trying to create better guest experiences, to sort of time those messages, time those points where guests are in the mindset of either buying or they want something urgently at that time, while it also sort of drives the revenue and the benefit for the hotels in the end, right? So we're trying to identify those to build that win-win situation.
Right. Yeah. The anticipating service, but also, of course, the whole idea of upselling and the context of when people are ready to buy and not giving them too much noise because as I see it, we're all suffering from digital noise and you're trying to give signal to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I was just gonna mention kind of what you're, mentioning about, when they're ready to buy, or what hotels are constantly trying to promote things, right? So, I was talking with a luxury property yesterday, and, we're talking about, okay, you're trying to get the word out, right? About all of these different things that you're creating experiences, right? And so they're trying to get the word out that they are driving revenue on property from a DJ on the roof or happy hour by the pool. And they're doing, where it was clutter, like you mentioned, Adam, too much digital overload. Before it was like, papers in the elevator, papers on your check-in. And so now we're trying to make that more seamless digitally, and then be able to, as David mentioned, time out those messages. That's not overload, but so people are ready to buy, ready to do things on property, spend money while they're there. And then a big advantage of, using the LLM is to being able to be multilingual, right? So where especially in luxury properties, you have various, well, any type of property really, but depending on the location, lots of different language barriers for the staff, and then the guests that are coming on property that maybe don't understand some of the messaging you're putting out there. Now you have AI is able to communicate with them in their own language, which has been a big benefit for a lot of hotels.
Yeah. I think in general, it's a really interesting evolution happening where the old model has sort of been timed messages at certain points in time. And I think what LLMs are enabling is that we can start to record events happening in our system. For instance, I'll give you one example. Like, we can record the first time a guest uses the mobile key, right? So we know the exact moment they're entering the room for the first time. So what do you do with that information then? What kind of experience do you want to build? Perhaps, most guests want the Wi-Fi password when they enter their room, or if they've provided that it's their birthday or they're celebrating something special, hotel staff might have prepared something in the minibar, right? So you would push that message to elevate that experience. So it's all about identifying those key moments, those key triggers in the system, and then putting LLMs on top of that to deliver messages, right?
Right. So just to color what you just said there, which is amazing, right? So you get this long laundry list of what you need. Somewhere in there is the Wi-Fi password. And you're saying that based on the context of the guest saying, when is the most likely instance when they want the Wi-Fi password, which is right when after they enter the room, that's when you can deliver an automated message that gives them exactly what they're looking for based on predictive analysis.
Yeah, and this is really hard to do.
Yeah.
And I think we have a long way ahead of us to create that truly seamless experience. But I
Mhm.
think the tools and the technology is there now for us to start to craft these experiences, which is really interesting.
Well, and we're also, working with the properties to train the AI on what, anticipating what questions are going to ask. So, like, instead of maybe bombarding them with stuff, let's say that we are anticipating they're going to ask these questions. So, and that can be really as we're setting up, the model with the concierge team on property, right? So, like, what kind of questions do you typically get asked? Okay, well, let's put those questions, train the AI based on what their guests are typically asking. So when they do say, "What's the Wi-Fi password?" the AI knows the answer, right? So because there's, we're pulling our responses, based on the hotel website, from going out, crawling the web, but fenced in. But some things are just, are put out there on the website, right? So we want to train the AI based on what guests are typically looking for. And then we take our analytics and say, okay, what are the trends that guests are also asking, right? So then we can look back and say, you know what? You have, you know, so many guests, as we're talking earlier about the towels, asking for more towels. Why don't you put 4 towels in the room instead of 2? And then you'll get that less requests.
Mhm.
So we're trying to help use AI to create, or to look at the analytics with the hotel so they can improve their operation too.
Yeah, that's semantic analysis. If 60% of your guests are saying you need more towels, just add more, and then
It's just one of
a
the-
then it's a linen replenishment issue and not a actual guest servicing issue.
right, right.
So, Anne, previously you mentioned a luxury hotel, and I'm wondering, how does a digital journey differ for a luxury hotel versus those properties in other categories?
Yeah. That's a really great question because we do, our an Inspire niche has really for a long time been the luxury hotel, lifestyle independent. With our AI concierge tool, we are, working with a lot more mid-scale and more select service hotels. What we see for the luxury hotels, though, is the luxury hotel guest, right? They might expect to go to the front desk, right? And you want your team as the luxury hotelier to offer this really great service. And so we can configure our guest journey based on the type of property. So an example I would use is, even luxury hotel I was speaking with in Mexico yesterday, right? They are like, we're going to have our guests come for the front desk. They have to give their ID. We don't want them to go through the full check-in. But what we always talk to the hotel about is like, hey, let the travelers are used to checking in more online, right? Their airline and different things along the way. So let's take the administrative piece out of the check-in, right? So like they can enter in their information, their address, their email address. We can write that back down to the PMS for the marketing teams. But then that allows, we work with the front desk, right? To say, okay, now you can see these people completed the pre-arrival, have their key ready to go. So when they arrive, they've entered in their arrival time. And so, like, if I've entered in, I'm arriving at 3 o'clock, I would expect to get to the hotel and them to know that I'm there, right? So that's a luxury experience, right? Hey, Anne Frye, we're expecting you. We have your key ready. Let me tell you all about the resort and all the things that are happening. So we see that check-in experience differ from a luxury traveler. We like to say that the technology complements that guest service, rather than replace in that case. When we're saying, okay, as a luxury traveler, you're sitting by the pool. Yes, you might be at a resort where there's lots of servers walking around. But as soon as there's not and you want a drink, you want the drink. And then you're like looking around. So we want to be able to give them the options, right? So we don't have to replace the service that you're giving, but we want to be able to enhance it and really make it a experience that they're expecting, even into the TV, right? So people are expecting the luxury experience to feel like home. Yeah, I worked in hotels for a long time, and it was like hotels are becoming a lot more like your home, and your home is becoming a lot more like a hotel, is what we used to say. And so when you go into your guest room, you expect to be able to cast and stream and have that kind of residential experience. So that is a luxury touch point as well on the TV. So there's lots of different touch points along a luxury stay that can, differ from the select service mid-scale, where maybe it's more about, hey, we need to really streamline operations. We work with some hotels that don't even have a front desk at all and say they want to automate that whole experience. That's a different experience than the luxury hotels. So we look at it more of a complement.
The whole thing of a digital journey. Some hotels have tablets, and then others are increasingly going towards mobile apps. So I'm wondering, for most hotels out there, they may look at it and go, well, people are apped out. We don't need to have an advanced TV because our guests aren't really staying in the rooms, and tablets is another expense. How can you convince them to say these things really add value and can really differentiate your brand to drive both bookings and loyalty? What would you say to that in terms of driving value?
No, I was just going to mention one thing. I'll turn it to you, David. With just what you mentioned, Adam, on the tablet perspective. David and I were just talking about this yesterday. I mean, we're seeing the luxury hotels trending back towards tablets, where maybe that was not as front of the tech stack. It was, and then it wasn't. Now it seems to be coming back because people do want to disconnect, right? Yeah, I think you hit it on the head there, Adam. It's like, okay, a luxury travel does want to disconnect, but they still want to be in their room and be able to maybe order room service. We want to drive revenue. We want to be able to control the curtains. We might have a really comfortable bed, but we don't. The only way to control it is through the iPad. So I just wanted to mention the tablet piece, but I'll turn it over to you, David.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say that you know the right touch point is great for the right purpose, right? So if we're talking about tablets, for instance, they're fantastic at controlling room controls. Well, if you would do that through your personal device, you need to connect to a network, and there's all sorts of things that could go wrong there. But while if you have a dedicated tablet to do that, it's very fast and seamless. Same thing with the TV. TVs are great for entertainment and displaying information. Maybe they shouldn't be used as devices to order food on. And just to build on what Anne said, I think one really, really interesting aspect is that if we're talking about disconnecting, to her point, is that you want to disconnect, but from all the boring messages that you might get from work or from things that you want to get away from, right? But you still want to be able to message that concierge service and get service while you're there. So you need to find that balance, and I think that can be done with the right touch points, but also with the right experiences.
So, and just to go back to the point you mentioned earlier about how the industry's going towards tablet, then away, and now they're back. And I really love tablets because, as you said, it gives people a chance to disconnect from their own phone and just sort of have that structured, pleasurable experience in a tablet. And I'm wondering if you could color that just in terms of what you're seeing in a tablet, in terms of how it encourages people to really explore a hotel. And by explore, I mean learn about all that's available to the hotel and also the potential for upselling.
Yeah, absolutely. We are installing a really amazing luxury property opening up in Charleston, and it's been a pleasure looking at kind of with them what they offer to guests, right? So really amazing things on the water and activities. And so they can book activities through the tablet. They can book, of course, room service, but there's multiple restaurants and outlets on property. So information about those, the ability to book cabanas up by the pool, and then really take all of those things that the guest is booking. So driving revenue through the tablet and all those touch points, and then taking those bookings and creating itinerary. So when the traveler looks at the tablet, they say, okay, great. I have reservations at the dinner tonight at 6. I'm in the morning, I'm going to the spa at 8:30. I'm going on a boat ride at noon. So you're able to really communicate what the guest is going to be doing. But we're also seeing more and more, properties that are looking at um, things in the room, right? So we have these amazing bed types. I stayed at a property that had some, ability to have controls in the rooms. They had something with the bed, but it was a different. You had to go to a phone to control the bed. You had to go to something else to control the lights, and it was a disjointed experience. And they wanted to bring all these amazing touch points in the room, including the mini bar and selling things through the mini bar and wellness things that they are selling, but all that in one experience. So the tablet really allows the guest to control the room, kind of as David mentioned, but really, as you mentioned, Adam, create revenue opportunities across property for experiences.
Yeah, that's very interesting about bringing the mini bar into the room there, just to know, because I know a lot of people don't even wanna open the mini bar simply because it's, stocked with whatever, but that could allow you to give another touch point to say, "Listen, it's not just Coca-Cola and Pepsi in there, it's, where we've have this local vendor that we have this bespoke cola," or something like that for you to try and highlight that.
Yeah, I spoke to a property the other day who was looking for something really cool. Just want to piggyback on that, Adam. They wanted a bespoke cocktail program, right? So where they would have sort of AI, they would come up with the cocktails, and then AI would help kind of guide the traveler into what the cocktail program was gonna be, and then that was a bespoke experience that the in-room dining could bring up versus just like you mentioned, all this random standard things are in there, but it's not personalized to what me as the traveler wants. So, it does create a neat touch point.
And we're talking a lot about digital touch points, but I think in the hotel industry, which is this is my basically my first time working in it, it's so interesting to look at touch points because a mini bar is also a touch point. It could also be a branded experience, right? And I'm really passionate about how you bring tech into branded experiences. Hence why we're doing all of this. So it's a really interesting topic.
Well, I find it super interesting because what we're essentially talking about is giving hoteliers tools to automate a lot of the mechanics to then enable the hoteliers to be more creative with the experiences that they're offering, and and then invite guests to partake in these experiences. Um, so, Anna, I'm wondering, you mentioned the word itinerary earlier. What does Inspire have in terms of a itinerary planner for the guests? Could you color that feature a little bit more, because this is a huge way to really enrich experiences.
Yeah, exactly. So what we do is, we talked a little bit earlier about how we're integrated, right? So Inspire is this seamless touch point for tablet, TV, or phone, right? Mobile device, but it's a seamless experience. But on the back end, there's a lot of integrations that bring these experiences to life, right? Hotels are using a lot of different platforms. So then when we're talking about our itinerary, the itinerary builder is pulling from the integrations across, right? So I might have booked my dinner reservation through 7 Rooms. I've booked my activity through real time reservations or Way, and then I've booked my spa for Book for Time. But we're pulling that all into one spot. So because the traveler doesn't know all those things, they're just looking at one spot. They're booking these things, so we pull those and from the various integrations and deliver that seamlessly through either that tablet or the phone.
Yeah, the analogy that is so often said is that the average person doesn't know how a car works, but they still know how to get from point A to point B, and they know how to drive a car. So essentially, that's what you're doing, is you're bringing everything together to allow the guests to have that clarity on their whole day, and then they know exactly where they need to be for that great experience. And when bringing all these together, all these touch points, you mentioned 7 rooms for dining, Book for Time for spa, Way for activities, bringing it all to one in this all-in-one platform. And really, this is a big trend in hotel tech, where you're taking single endpoint solutions and really going towards an all-in-one platform. And I'm wondering, could you just color what are the inherent advantages of going for all-in-one versus best-in-breed endpoints?
Yeah, and we talk about this a lot. That we don't want to recreate the wheel in some spots. So there are a lot of great systems that the travel center that the hotel uses, right? So via a POS, guest ticketing, we talked about those, but we want to integrate those so it is seamless for the guest, and we do all of our own integrations. But we do also get a lot of conversations about dashboard fatigue, right? I was at a conference last year where a GM in New York City spoke about her front desk, and that she had pulled her front desk, and they said they used the front desk alone, used 21 different systems. All right. So that's a lot. And so
Yeah.
we're trying to combine those into an ecosystem to make it easier for, okay, this is the same place that you're going to go in and message the guests. You're going to upload your promotions. And this is a project I'll turn it to David to talk up more about, but one stop for the back end to streamline the operations is really important. So I'll turn that over to you, David.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of Inspire One, right? So we're pulling all of this information from these different sources, but it also gives you a snapshot to what the guests are doing, how they're interacting with all the different touch points. What is converting, what is not converting, where can we improve, how many digital keys are issued, etc. So we're really trying to give that operational efficiency to the hoteliers that ultimately use the system, right?
Yeah, David, at the mention of Inspire One, I'm wondering if you could just take a step back and tell us what is this platform and what data sources is it bringing together and who is it for in terms of the end user?
Yeah. So if we're thinking about it as, we have the touch points, and that's the guest layer, right? And those are the layers that we're building and distributing to guests and working with. So all the information that comes from how the guests are interacting are landing into Inspire One. So Inspire One is your uh, well, as we've been talking about here, your guest experience system, right? But it also serves as your CMS, where you can update those touch points, you can upload new information, but it also actually serves as your messaging platform, right? So we're trying to encompass all of this into one system where you as a hotelier, you get a clear overview of your operations and of your touch points. So you understand, okay, what messages are coming in? What do I need to answer to? How do I build my campaigns? How do I design my pages inside of either the native app or across the guest journey or the messages that go out to the guests? So it's that control tower for your full hotel operations, essentially.
Control tower. Very cool. And
I like
yeah,
that.
I like that. So what else does Inspire do? Could you talk about some of the other features or tools that you'd want to mention?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we're launching a new product right now, and we're doing a pilot here in New York. Hence why I'm in New York, and we call it the digital guest journey. So if you think about the world as it was, say 5 years ago, everyone was talking about apps and native apps, etc. What and this also comes back to what LLMs have enabled, right? We were talking about text messaging and knowing the right moment when the guest interacts with the system. Well, this is what the digital guest journey is. So it's a text-based guest experience where most of the stuff that the guests do happen through text, right? You get reminded to check in, but you can't really check in through text, right? So it delivers the right user interface for you to do that check-in. So providing your credit card details, doing the ID verification. We do like a biometric scan of your face where we compare these things to verify you as a guest. So that needs to happen on a user interface level. So you're texting, you get user interfaces when you need them. We issue the key when you need it after you've done your check-in. We provide the room to you. When, as I talked to you earlier, when you enter the room, we know that for the first time, we can trigger a personalized message. So it's a text-based experience, but with UI elements that serve as for those experiences.
Cool. And we started the conversation, we mentioned the term AI and LLMs. I'm wondering if we could revert back to that because it is all the rage here, but there's so many ways that these tools can improve operations. And one interesting thought here, just to frame this for listeners as well as to frame what tools you can mention here, is liberating human teams so that way the humans can have a really fun time on site helping guests out, talking with them,
Yeah.
doing the running around, and then AI is there to help out alongside any other automated tools. So therein, I'm wondering, what does Inspire offer with that as our North Star? And what else are you seeing in the market that really intrigues you? David, if you want to start off.
Yeah, sure. So look, Adam. So when we're looking at our operations, what we see now in our AI concierge service is that I think, and you correct me if I'm wrong here, but 75% of all queries that come into the hotels are answered on the fly by the AI, which is what LLMs have enabled. And I think this is just the first step in what the development will be. When we go into agents in the future, now this is a bit far fetched, but when we go into agents that can handle, you know, buying things for the guests or ordering things for the guests or booking for the guests, that's really when I think we will see the huge untapped potential that this has in both alleviating, operations on site, but also providing a much better guest experience.
And just to piggyback on that a little bit, as you mentioned, or as we talked about earlier, the task management, right? So I think where, AI understanding tasks is really saving the front desk time, right? As you mentioned, Adam, this is to freeing up the guest service agents, right? Now, what we're calling front desk. That's what you want them to do is give guest service. And how many times have you been to a hotel and they're on the phone and they're, hey, we want to do, we're taking calls and taking information instead of talking to the guests. So we want to take all that, administrative, tasks and try to take those off their plate. We are tracking, time that we're saving them. And then we're, working with the properties to say, okay, you know, maybe on Sundays we're saving you this much time. Can we look at that as labor hour savings? As labor market is increasing and wages are increasing and labor is decreasing, wages increasing, right? The hotels can be pressed. And so we want to, really give the hotels that chance to have their team talking to the guest. We all know that the hotel industry in general can be kind of behind on technology. And what we're seeing, especially that coming into 2026, I think, if you're not trying to implement AI in some capacity, you're sort of behind. And so now we're seeing people that are like, oh my gosh, where the what we talked about before of like a luxury hotel, you're saying we don't want to use technology because our guests are so high touch, right? And so now it's like they're high touch, but how do we help our high touch team actually have that interaction and use technology to help them? I think there's been a big shift. I mean, we really felt like it was the last couple of years, like, how do we can't decide if we should use technology to now like we should have been using it. How do we use it correctly and what's the best path forward? We've seen that as a big shift.
Yeah, it is a big shift, but therein, to go back to that North Star, it's all about picking off ways that we can automate tasks one by one to then free up the teams who, as we all know, labor is a huge cost, but also in huge shortage right now. So I see these tools as helping inspire, huh, the next generation of.
See
You
what you
just
did
got
there?
it, yeah. Inspiring the next generation of hoteliers to come back to the industry and saying like, "Look, um, with all these automated tools, you can have a lot of fun just walking around a hotel and helping guests out and not have to do all this clerical work that you aren't really intrigued by doing." On that front, I'm wondering, you mentioned labor savings. Could you color that just with a numerical value just to give hoteliers a picture in their mind of how much they're actually saving?
Yeah, I mean, we typically, this is kind of based on hotels, but what we are typically saying is each one of those tasks is a saving about a 2-minute call to the front desk, right? So if I say, I'm going to call down to the front desk, I'm going to ask for these things to the front office agent, guest agents on the phone for about 2 minutes. And so then we can say, okay, then we look at the number of tasks that we're creating through the system. And we have a property, for instance, that we track 48 hours, right, in a month. So then now where we're looking to drill down more is how does that because we can see that those hours per day and see how does that translate to a shift. Now, right now, is it actually like, are we saying, oh, we're going to be able to eliminate a position? I mean, many times, there's one or two people that are needed to be there, but what we're doing is saying we're saving these hours and just saying exactly what we said earlier, Adam, to free them up to do other things. So instead of, the other guests standing around waiting for them to finish up on those 2 minutes, they're able to interact with them and provide a better overall guest experience. So we're showing hours saved typically based on that 2 minutes. And then what David mentioned that about do average 75% of the messages that are coming in. And we talked a little bit earlier about guest expectations and guests are expecting to get instantaneous responses, right? When I was at a hotel once, not one of our hotels, but I went to text and it said, you will get a message, expect 5 minutes. And then that's a long time. I was like, first of all, 5 minutes is a long time. Second of all, it never responded. But ours is responding very quickly and answering 75% of those messages. And when we have a great quote from one of our partners that said that alone is allowing our guests to provide these great services because great guest service. Because a lot of the questions are all the similar, like we talked about earlier. What time is checkout? You know, where is the closest place to get breakfast? I mean, it's typically those questions are pretty repetitive. And if AI is responding to those, that's freeing up somebody from looking at a dashboard and answering these manually.
Yeah. So let's look broader a little bit here because we've covered off a lot about what a GMS can do and offered some great points for hoteliers to really get creative. Um, but of course, we're adapting technology to what the larger trends are. So therein, I'm wondering if either you or both could chime in to what hotel trends you're seeing, whether they be design or activities, operations, and then how is Inspire helping hotels address these upcoming trends?
Yeah, I can take that and then I'll give it to David. But they think about this a lot, right? What are the trends? And it's like as technology has been quickly trending, right, for hotels to adopt, there's still this major human element, right? So then we're almost seeing already so quickly a little bit of a backlash. Well, like the human element, the human element. So we really are focused on using technology to make that experience feel personal, So how do we personalize that stay? We talked about guest data and we don't store data or have data, but how do we get touch points from the CRM that the hotel's using, the PMS to really make that a personalized experience? I mean, that is what guests are looking for. They don't, you know, n- nobody wants to have stayed at a hotel many times and get there and say, "Have you stayed here before?" I mean, that just happened to me when I went up
Yeah.
the other day. I don't I've stayed here like 50 times. So, how do we recognize these guests and then, recognize the things that they like to do while they're on property. But really personalize the stay through the touch points. I'll pass it over to David.
Yeah. And what Anne touched on with personalizing the stay for guests, I think I'm seeing a huge trend in also creating the branded experiences for these digital touch points. So nobody wants to use a white label experience that looks like every other experience, right? You want to be able to influence the AI's tone of voice. You want to be able to influence if there's a user interface that the guests are interacting with. You want them to be branded with the hotel's, profile, with the tone of voice. It should all the whole digital guest journey should feel like an end-to-end extension of your branded experience on site, right? So that is something we're working very hard with to be able to both enable that, but also do it at scale, right? So that it's very easy to ship a white labeled experience, one size fits all. But how do you tweak that at scale when you're working with thousands of hotels that have a different tone of voice, a different graphic profile, a different branded experience, right? So that is very intriguing.
To close out here, I'm wondering if there's anything else that either you want to mention that we haven't covered, and any other things that really excite you about the hospitality industry?
One thing just to touch on, on the TV side, we're excited to see this experience be more cohesive with like Google Cast and embedded in the TVs and AirPlay. So that's something that we've launched that we're excited about as well. And I think for me, from a personal perspective, exciting about the hospitality industry, it's an industry I personally worked in for 25 years, right? So I understand what happens at the different departments and different levels of positions within the hotel. And I, on a personal level, love working for a company where I feel like we're supporting those team members and I'm able to work with them in this new way, right? Of like providing, as you mentioned earlier, Adam, like how do we make their job a little more seamless and easy to streamline their operations so that they can most people get in hotels because they're people, right? And they want to talk, they want to give good service, they want to deliver, amazing experiences. And so I think that's what we're teed up to help them with.
And from my side, I think I've never worked in the hospitality industry prior to this job, right? So I come from actually industrial design where I worked with a lot of hardware. But for me, it's so intriguing with the hospitality industry where ho- hotels are basically storytellers, right? You create these stories, you create these experiences, and everyone is different from the other one. And it's just so fascinating to work with hotels to empower them to tell these stories in a better way. Like a certain hotel is all about disconnection. Another one might want to attract, biohackers that are used to measuring everything around their health. And it's just so interesting to see these branded experiences and also help hotels to increase that brand messaging, right?
Yeah, I mean that's as a biohacker myself, I love to track, but also just know that a hotel is actually looking out for me in terms of identifying who I am and understanding that your breakfast offer is meaningless for me because I'm intermittent fasting, right? I mean,
Yeah.
let's mass.
Or, you provide a fully protein loaded breakfast and a smart bed that can give you a sleep score, right? It's amazing.
Yeah, yeah, yes, the whole idea of integrating the smart bed, as you said earlier, bringing that all into one platform so I can program that easily to say, like, listen, I want my bedding microenvironment to be 19 degrees Celsius instead of 21, right? Something as simple as that, but making that as effortless as possible by bringing it all into one centralized platform. That would be incredible to see. Well, Anne and David, thank you so much. It's been a delightful conversation to really learn about where things are and where they're going for the digital guest journey. Thank you both so much.
Thank you, Adam.
Thanks, Adam.
Thanks for listening to the Gain Momentum podcast. To stay up to date, make sure to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Gain Advisors, head to gainadvisors.com.